Okay, everybody. Well, I am having to give the PSAT today, so we are now going to go through and do a quick review and then add some new stuff to it. So we're looking at the 7 cervical vertebrae. Remember the first vertebrae right here. This is known as the atlas. That's known as the atlas. Then as we move down, this is the axis. When we come up to the atlas, remember right here, we have ourselves our occipital fossa, and that's where the skull is gonna sit in. And then right here, you can see the top of the dens. And so if you remember, the dens is where the atlas will sit on. Cervical vertebrae 1 will sit onto cervical vertebrae number 2. Now, as we move down, we have intervertebral disc in between each one of the centrum of the cervical vertebrae. We come over here, remember that the centrum, the body, is going to get wider and wider and wider as you go down the spine. So through the thoracic vertebrae and then the lumbar vertebrae, the centrum is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger so that we can carry and disperse more weight evenly, or basically spread the increasing weight as we go down better. Now we come back up here. We got cervical vertebrae number 1, which we come back over here. Cervical vertebrae number 1, skull sits on it. Skull is able to nod back and forth. Yes, so I can't really do this guy, but he's gonna say yes. Cervical vertebrae number 2 and 1 are gonna articulate back and forth. That's gonna allow you to say no. And then we've got these 7 cervical vertebrae. After that, we have the 12 thoracic vertebrae. Then we have the 5 lumbar vertebrae. The thoracic vertebrae are super, super easy to recognize because they each one have a rib attached to them. So as you go down, we attach ribs to each one of the thoracic vertebrae. And if you look, the ribs are actually articulating with the transverse process and the body of the centrum here. And so, or the centrum there. So let me take this guy. It might be easier to see on this guy. So if you look on the side there, you can see that the rib is actually attaching to the centrum. And then on the other side, you can see that the transverse process is attaching to the rib as well. Now, so we've got transverse processes, and we've got ourselves spinous processes. Remember, these spinous processes are for big old muscles, such as your trapezius muscles, rhomboids, latissimus dorsi. All these back muscles are going to attach along the spinous process. So we have ourselves our 7 cervical. Then we have the ones attached to the ribs. We have 12 thoracic, and then 5 lumbar. Now we come back up here and we talk about the rib cage. We won't talk about these guys yet, but the rib cage comes all the way from the back of the thoracic all the way forward and attaches to the sternum here. Now with the sternum, we have ourselves the manubrium, which is just simply the top of the sternum here. We have a little hinge right here, allows for some flexibility of that sternum. Then we have the body of the sternum itself. And then we finally have the xiphoid process. Now, the xiphoid process is going to attach, basically one of the attachment sites for your abdominal muscle. So you've got a big sheet right here we call your abs. It's actually an ab that go from here to here, from here to here, and that's one of the attachment sites for it. We come back up here, and if we notice, we have 12 ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We go to the back, 11 and 12. All right, so there's 11 and 12. The first 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they go bone to cartilage to sternum. Bone, cartilage, sternum, bone, cartilage, sternum. We call the first 5 true ribs. The next 5, bone, cartilage to sternum, bone, cartilage to more cartilage to sternum, bone, cartilage to sternum. We call the next 5 false ribs. They kind of make up this opening here in the abdomen. If the rib cage had gone all the way across, you wouldn't be flexible. And then we have our 2 floating ribs at the bottom. If we come over here to this guy, you can see the 2 floating ribs here at the bottom here. And basically these are to protect your kidneys, which are located right underneath here. All of this makes up your rib cage, and we're gonna be protecting your lungs and your heart, etc. Now, we finally move towards the end. We have our 5 lumbar vertebrae. These big vertebrae make up your lower back. And they are going to attach to this big triangular bone right here. And that big triangular bone right there is called the sacrum. Come back over here. And here is the sacrum pulled out. So this is the sacrum. Now, that sacrum, the big triangular bone, you can see it on your picture. There's the sacrum. There's the front of the sacrum, the anterior side. And then over here, here's the back of the sacrum, the posterior side of the sacrum. These are actually 5 fused vertebrae, that basically make up the tying together of your pelvis. So this is going to be one pelvis and another pelvis. They're going to come together and they're going to attach to the sacrum right there. We look at my model right here. I just have a pelvis here. And we can see that this pelvis and this pelvis attach here to the sacrum. If this thing was loosey-goosey, then your legs, which are going to be pushing into your pelvis right here, so your legs attach into your pelvic bone right here, this would have nothing solid to push against. That sacrum, these 5 fused vertebrae, they make up the bottom end of your spinal column. At the very bottom of it, you've got another 3 to 5 bones. People are different. Fused bones put together called the coccyx. C-O-C-C-Y-X. Literally means like the beak of a cuckoo bird. Somebody looked at that and said, hey, look, it looks like a cuckoo bird's beak. Kind of weird. This guy right here is also known as your tailbone. And so the idea is around 20 million years ago, human beings started standing upright, and so they didn't need the balance in the back. Tails are basically meant for balance. They keep the weight distributed evenly. Regardless of whether or not we had tails or not, this is known as the tailbone. It is an attachment site for a whole bunch of ligaments. And so we're gonna have ligaments that are gonna run across, and they're gonna help tie together this pelvis here. One of the things with this pelvis is there's gonna be ligaments running everywhere here that helps to tie this whole thing together. With the sacrum, at the very end of the sacrum right here, and you can see it in your picture right there. All right, so you can see it in your picture right there. There's a little hole right here. It's called the sacral hiatus, H-I-A-T-U-S. And this basically is the end of the vertebral foramen. And so we come back over here, we look, and in the vertebral foramen, what we end up having is we have ourselves the spinal cord running all the way down, and shooting out the sides here are these little nerves that come out the bottom. Well, down here, out the sides of the sacrum, you can see these nerves coming out, and they're gonna shoot down the legs. And then at the bottom of the sacral hiatus, we're gonna have new nerves shooting out. They're gonna kind of drape across the bottom of the coccyx here. And so basically these are gonna be innervating the legs down below. So we basically have, once again in review, C1 through 7, cervical vertebrae 1 through cervical vertebrae number 7. We have the atlas and the axis, which are gonna make up the articulation points of the head, so it can nod, and it can, shake your head, yes, and then nod your head, no. We've got spinous processes all the way down for muscle attachments. We've got transverse processes all the way up, which basically provide attachment sites for ligaments, as well as attachment sites for these ribs here in the thoracic vertebrae. We have the thoracic vertebrae, we have the lumbar vertebrae, the sacrum, and the coccyx. Whoa, let me just do this guy. That guy's gonna be falling apart. We come back over, you can see intervertebral disc located in between each centrum of the vertebrae. And remember that intervertebral disc is made of that really tough fibrocartilage, lots of collagen, it acts like a jelly donut, provides a cushion. Remember, if you kind of torque this guy, or torque him, I guess, and it can possibly push out this one side, we say that's a herniation. You can have a slip disc that way, which causes nerve pain. These are known as T1 through T12. This is L1 through L5. And then the sacrum is S1 right here. So this is L5 to S1. Reason why I bring that up is that is a big point. I don't know if you guys can see the angle in the video there. That's a big angle right there. A lot of people have lower back pain in the L5 and S1. Lots of herniations occur here, etc. And we'll talk when I come back about, especially in females, a female's sacrum is going to be kicked out more than a male's sacrum. I can talk about now this for a little bit. So if I look at my two pelvises here, pelvi, I'm not sure which one it is. We look at our two pelvises here, and this is one of those areas where men and women are different. When puberty hits, basically puberty basically means coming of age. It's a Greek thing. We all started off with basically male hips. And then what's going to end up happening is testosterone going to come around, of course, thicken all these bone structures up. But then estrogen comes around and it'll begin to widen out this pubic arch here. It's going to widen out this pelvic basin here. And then one of the things it does kind of different is it's going to take this sacrum and it's going to kick it out more. So it's going to kick that sacrum out more. As a result, what ends up happening is if you look at the space in what's called the pelvic outlet here, and we look at the space in a male's pelvic outlet, we compare the two, much easier to see which one a baby can come out of. Right here would be where your genitals are located. Genitals for a male, genitals for a female. And we can see that space here, much, much bigger. So as a result, that widening of the hips, a female having the hourglass shape, is basically for a purpose. That purpose of the lower portion of the hourglass is because the pelvis has enlarged, has widened. It's actually not enlarged, but it's widened, and that's going to create a bigger pelvic outlet. So now a baby can come out here. So we're going to look at the distance between the front of the pelvis and the coccyx, and the distance between what we're going to call these ischial tuberosities in a little while. So that kind of makes up the bulk end of all of this.